The rematch between Merab Dvalishvili and Sean O'Malley is finally here, and it's time for my final prediction. I've gone back and rewatched their most recent performances and dug into what we know about how their training camps have gone, and I'm fairly certain that this fight will look very different to the first one. In terms of my own fight predictions, I'm on a bit of a streak at the moment. I did nail JDM by decision over Belal Muhammad. I called Michael Morales getting an early KO on Gilbert Burns. And I didn't even make a prediction for Erin Blanchfield against Macy Barber, so I guess that makes me 3 for 3. But this fight is very different. It's one of the hardest fights to call in recent memory, but based on all the research I've done, all my fight breakdowns in the lead up to this one, I'm fairly certain, fairly confident in my pick. Anyway, in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down what's changed since their first fight, how their styles match up now, and why a seemingly very random comparison of Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman might actually tell us quite a lot about how this one could play out. So stick around to the end of the video as I walk you through my prediction and tell you how I think this one goes down. As this fight is a rematch, it only makes sense if we start by taking a look at what we learned from the first fight. Now, this was one of those instances where it was a very close fight, or a fairly close fight, but a clear win for Merab. The strike differentials weren't massive, but Merab won the rounds that he won clear enough to get the nod from the judges. Now, when I look back at this fight, there were some very un-Sean O'Malley-like moments in this fight, and he really did disappoint me with his performance. Now, it's difficult when you try and distribute the credit in a fight like this, because I don't want to discredit what Merab did, because the winner does deserve the lion's share of the credit by winning the fight. But at the same time, a lot of the blame does need to be heaped on the mistakes that Sean O'Malley made in this first fight. Merab did what Merab does best. He used his relentless pressure, the pace, and got the takedowns to win decisively. However, Sean O'Malley just looked flat. He didn't manage the range well. He wasn't getting off the counter shots that normally see him get victories in fights, and he got caught on his heels far too often. There was far too much hesitation. He got caught stuck in the mud in moments where Merab was just able to seize on the opportunities, get the takedowns with such ease. Against a fighter like Merab, you need to be either out of range or closing range, getting your strikes off. If you're within range and not throwing strikes, he will just level change and get the takedown. We saw that happen in Merab's most recent fight against Umar Nurmagomedov, when Umar got tired in the later rounds and he wasn't so effective with his strikes. When he just stood there, Merab was happy just to get the underhooks on him, get a body lock, drive him against the fence, level change and take him down. We saw that in Merab's most recent fight. And for O'Malley to have that kind of hesitancy, something that we so rarely see in his game, was really disappointing. And on top of that, there were periods in this fight, particularly in the second and fourth round, where Merab was able to hold down Sean O'Malley for extended periods of time. And normally one good thing about Sean O'Malley is, if you look back at the Petr Yan fight, which was a very controversial fight back in the day, when O'Malley got taken down, he showed urgency getting back to his feet. And in the second and fourth round of the first Merab fight, we just didn't see that kind of urgency. Again, really, really disappointing to see. And it's not as though you can explain that away by saying that Merab has added this top control pressure to his game. Because as you saw in the fight against Umar, yes, Umar might be a more superior grappler to Merab, but Umar was able to get back to his feet. There was a lot of time where Merab would just dump Umar down and not really do anything from the top position. So that's why I feel as though Sean O'Malley, I'm not saying that he was the cause of his own downfall, but he definitely allowed Merab to look a lot better from those top positions than Merab normally does. And don't get me wrong, O'Malley did have his moments. In that first fight, he landed some nice shots to the body, some nice jabs on Merab that really rocked his head back. And then, of course, there's that fifth round, where Sean O'Malley definitely hurt Merab with that teep to the body. He had Merab on his heels. He was chasing down Merab, which in the fifth round against a cardio machine like Merab is something that you don't often see. But that kind of finish will definitely have given Sean O'Malley confidence. But like I say, even though it was a close fight, it was competitive in parts, it was a clear win for Merab. So from that first fight, we did learn that Merab is very deserving of his nickname, The Machine. He just kept coming and coming and coming. Sean had no answer to him really until that moment in the fifth round. And Sean O'Malley, he just underperformed, and we have worked out since then why that might be. And I want to start by giving a massive caveat here, because I know that a lot of you don't like it when fighters lose fights and then complain about injuries that they were dealing with throughout camp. Most fighters, every fighter goes into fights hurt. They go in there with little niggles. But at the same time, Sean O'Malley had a very real injury that he was dealing with. And the evidence for that is the hip surgery that he underwent immediately after his fight against Merab. Now, there were rumours that Sean O'Malley was dealing with injuries heading into that fight, but the extent to which he was injured wasn't well known until after the fight. And hip surgery, hip injury, is a big deal because the hips are so integral to what you can do as a mixed martial artist. They play a part in your kicks, obviously, in all striking. A lot of the force comes from your hips. Obviously in your wrestling, where you want to have light hips for the sprawl, then heavy to put your weight down again. So for Sean O'Malley having to deal with a hip injury heading into this title fight, he was clearly compromised. I know that he didn't want to miss out on the opportunity, I should say, of headlining at the Sphere. Dana White sold it as a one-time only thing, but I do wonder in hindsight if he does regret that slightly, because if he was so compromised in terms of his mobility, his ability to wrestle, takedown defense and stuff like that, then what realistic chance did he have against beating Merab? It's just totally unrealistic. He did the interview with John Anik on ESPN, where he said that a level of delusion is necessary for fighters. So even though he was massively compromised, fighters need to have that invincibility factor when they're heading into fights. And I do totally understand that. But at the same time, if he was going in against a wrestler, against a really aggressive, front-footed fighter like Merab, with a really compromised hip, he was always going to underperform. And look, now with that injury fixed, there are no excuses for Sean O'Malley. He says he's the best that he's ever felt. So I'm expecting a very, very different performance this time round. And whilst we are on the topic of reasons why Sean O'Malley may have underperformed in that first fight, another reason is the lifestyle that he was living heading into that first fight and the very well documented changes that he's made in this camp. He's made it clear that he is now off social media. He doesn't smoke anymore. Some of the bad habits that he was in previous fight camps, he's completely put to one side heading into this one. And whilst this is a huge positive, I don't want to give this too much attention purely because different fighters, different needs, different lifestyles suit different people. Objectively, if you're not smoking and you're not distracting yourself with too many things outside of fighting, then you will be a better fighter. But at the same time, this tells me more about Sean O'Malley's personality and his personal life, the kind of human being that he's trying to be, rather than the fighter. I know that he did say that he's doing this for himself. He wants to be the best fighter that he could possibly be. And this is all great. But I don't want to give him an excuse in terms of this realm. If he was doing stuff like too much social media and smoking and things like that that were distracting him ahead of other fights, I don't really want to give that as a valid reason for an excuse of losing the first fight. Instead, I'd rather turn that into a positive, take a look at how he'll be improved heading into this fight. And again, he's giving himself no excuses this time round. Not only is he fit physically, he's fit mentally, fit spiritually heading into this one. So by all accounts, we should be seeing the very best version of Sean O'Malley. And now I want to compare this and contrast to the challenger and what we know about his training camp and how it massively differs to Sean O'Malley. Look, Sean O'Malley, he's publicly talking about all these changes that he's making in terms of the bad habits and things like that in his life. But one thing you can say about Merab is it's his consistency and his dedication that have got him to where he is. He might not be the most talented fighter. I think his record at the start of his career speaks to that. Often you'll see the most talented fighters beating the guys at the start of their career with relative ease because they don't need to work so hard. They just have that raw talent. Whereas Merab's story is very different to this. You know that he's such a hard worker. He's so dedicated. So Merab, he didn't need to give up social media. He didn't need to give up smoking to be at his best. He was already this disciplined guy. In terms of injuries, we know about Sean O'Malley's hip. We've been over that. But Merab, he seems to always be injured, but always able to perform like an absolute machine. You saw that toe injury, his broken toe that he got within the last couple of weeks. But you know that's not going to compromise him so much because he's always dealing with something. He always talks about dealing with things. Now, the caveat to that is that Merab is 34, and I think when his fall-off does come, it'll be quite spectacular because he so much relies on the pace, pressure, the chain wrestling, all the things that he does so well that takes so much out of your body. If you see how well conditioned these guys are, Merab is at the very top of that tree. So you know with Merab's training camp, it will be going like it always goes. He'll be pushing himself far too hard, picking up these little niggles, but making sure that he can perform at his very best on the night. And by the very best, I mean in that 5th round, deep into that 5th round, he still won't be breathing really, really heavy. He'll be going at his pace, dictating his pace throughout that full fight. Now, if I'm being totally honest, there has been one thing that has concerned me throughout this build-up when Merab has been interviewed. Well, there's a couple of things. One we're going to get onto later. But firstly, it's the talk of motivation, or their lack of. He says that he's really had to get himself motivated to beat Sean O'Malley, to fight Sean O'Malley. And that's just not what you want to hear from Merab, because all the talk I've just done then about how hard he'll be training, how disciplined he is, he's a fighter who really needs to be motivated to get the very best out of him. An unmotivated fighter isn't going to be going on 10-mile runs after training. He's not going to do all those extra bits that otherwise other fighters don't do, and why they get tired in the 5th round and why Merab doesn't. His style, everything about him, his intensity relies on being motivated. So if he's lacking motivation in this fight, I definitely don't expect to see an unfit Merab. But if I see a Merab who isn't quite as much of a killer, who isn't as much of a savage, who doesn't try and humiliate Sean O'Malley, could we be missing the very best part of him? He's the one who's questioned this motivation, by the way. It isn't something that I'm just putting out into the universe. Merab has said, I've kind of been struggling with motivation. I've had to get myself up for this fight. I already beat Sean O'Malley. It was easy. And now I'm looking for the finish. It's that last part that is going to be an integral part to my prediction. But Merab Dvalishvili has questioned his motivation. And that's one question mark over this. But other than that, when we look at both guys' training camps, I think the main question that has to be asked is whether or not Sean O'Malley's reinvention, like I said, in terms of his physical, the hip injury being healed now, and all the changes he's made to his lifestyle, does that reinvention beat Merab's consistency? These are the two things which really, really will play a massive part in this fight. And as we're talking about rematches, before we get onto the style matchup, I want to make a comparison with Kamaru Usman and Leon Edwards, and Merab Dvalishvili and Sean O'Malley. Tell me if I'm completely way off on this, but I do feel as though they tell a fairly similar story. The reason why I'm bringing in this comparison is because I do believe that rematches do tell us a lot about fights, because fighters have to adapt against similar opposition, and how they deal with those adaptations can tell us a really interesting story. Now, the reason why I'm using Leon Edwards against Kamaru Usman is because it is a classic wrestler against striker storyline. Now, in the first fight between these two, Kamaru Usman was very dominant. He used his wrestling and his pressure to take down and basically beat up the fairly green Leon Edwards. So even there are some obvious comparisons between Kamaru Usman and Leon Edwards in their first fight, and what we saw between Merab Dvalishvili and Sean O'Malley in their first fight. Now, there are some obvious differences as well, like Leon Edwards was very green in his career, Sean O'Malley was a champion. But then when you look at the second fight, this is where things really do get interesting, and I think it's going to play a big part if Sean O'Malley wants to win this second fight. Now, Kamaru Usman was having a lot of success in their rematch until he did get head kicked by Leon Edwards. He was taking down Leon Edwards at will. Don't forget, Edwards did take Usman down in the first round, which shocked everyone, and he was doing really well in that first round. Then the pressure and the relentless wrestling of Usman kept getting through to Edwards until that head kick in the final round. And again, this might be a bit of a reach, but remember that kick in the 5th round of O'Malley against Merab? That could have told a similar story had O'Malley been able to capitalise on it. But anyway, that's not really where I'm drawing the comparison. The main lesson learned is that even elite pressure fighters with incredible grappling can lose the rematch if their opponent evolves enough. Now, Sean O'Malley may be in the Edwards role now, and one thing that he can learn is just to keep striking, even if things get tough, even if you will get taken down. Because I guarantee you, I'm saying this already, Sean O'Malley will get taken down in this rematch. Keep firing off the shots. Don't give up. Don't be passive. Don't be on your heels. And you might just land one of the most memorable knockouts in UFC history. Let me know what you guys think about this as a comparison. There aren't so many comparisons like these rematches between strikers and wrestlers to pick from that I found to be so similar. But I just think this rematch, like all rematches, are about adaptations. And with that being said, let's talk about the stylistic matchup between these fights. What are both Sean O'Malley and Merab Dvalishvili's potential paths to victory? And then I'll be ending with my fight prediction. So let's start with the challenger Sean O'Malley. And you probably already know where I'm going with this. He is going to get taken down in this fight. Before we get into what his game plan should be, he needs to accept that there will be moments in this fight where he does get taken down. And it's the shot selection that he chooses to throw, knowing the fact that he will get taken down, that could make a massive difference in this fight. To begin with, he really needs to use his range and distance management in an effective way. Similarly to Merab, both fighters either need to be out of range, where Merab can't take him down and O'Malley won't be able to get off his kicks, or they need to be within range dictating the action. And now by dictating the action, I don't mean that Sean O'Malley needs to be throwing shots willy-nilly. He's a counter fighter. He needs to use that to the best of his ability. Because Merab is sloppy. Merab has been called sloppy by Sean O'Malley in the build-up to this fight. I'm a massive Merab fan, but he doesn't have the cleanest striking. He was in the exchanges with Umar Nurmagomedov in the first and second round, and Umar was having so much success just with cleaner, crisper strikes. And I did a breakdown of their first fight between Merab and Sean O'Malley, where I just questioned the shot selection of O'Malley, because it just seemed way off. You know that Merab's going to be going for big overhand rights that he tries to lead into a single leg takedown. Sean O'Malley just needs to be cute with it, throw short, sharp shots, either right hands right down the pipe, or those jabs that cracked back Merab's head early on in the first fight. Don't be swinging big long left hooks or big overhand rights yourself, because Merab is quick enough, he's aggressive enough just to close the distance. He'll eat a shot as well, that's really important to note. Merab will eat a shot on his way in to get the takedown. You used to see him with a bloody nose, with some bruising around the eye. That's just because he does get caught moving in, and that's really important. But the counters will be so important for Sean O'Malley. I want to see him really stinging Merab with a jab when he does try to close the distance. And the knees and the front kick. This is a really, really important part if Sean O'Malley wants to win this fight. Merab Dvalishvili simply has to lower his level if he wants to get a takedown. This is the most basic, most casual take in MMA. If you're against a wrestler, knees through the middle. But Sean O'Malley has got such a good knee. The knee that he did against Chito Vera that almost took his head off, and yet Chito Vera just wasn't even wobbled. These kind of strikes could be really important. The front kick through the middle. A lot of the time when you're fighting a wrestler, fighters are advised not to kick because their kicks might get caught. But again, Sean O'Malley needs to accept that he will get taken down, and his kicks are some of his best weapons. So don't allow your game to be compromised just because you're going to get taken down, if you're going to get taken down anyway. So I think the teep through the middle that hurt Merab late, get that going early. It's a really sharp, it's not a push kick, it's a stabbing teep, and that'll be really effective. And that knee through the middle when Merab decides to close the distance. This is what needs to happen. And if you look back at the Merab against Umar fight, Umar won those first 2 rounds until that cardio started coming through. And the cardio from Merab, when the cardio difference really started to show later on, the cardio is going to be there for Merab. So Sean O'Malley really needs to make sure those first 2 rounds go well for him. Because even if he's outstriking Merab, he will get more tired than Merab towards the end. That's just a fact. That's just the way that it is. So if Sean O'Malley can have success early on, then he's got a great chance of winning this fight. He needs to be really, really careful with his shot selection. Accept that the takedowns will come, and when they come, be prepared for the kind of counters that will work in his favour. Now Merab, his path to victory. I don't really want to overcomplicate this because it is not quite rinse and repeat, because he will need to add a couple of things. But I think the pace, the pressure, even if he's giving up that first round just to tire out Sean O'Malley, I just think that's what he does best. The fight against Umar, I've referenced it a few times, but Umar did win those first 2 rounds. And then steadily you just saw the breathing getting heavier from Umar. When he got taken down from Merab, he was just slower getting back to his feet. If Merab can do that against Sean O'Malley, do some gesticulating to the crowd, throwing his hands in the air along the way, then he will probably win this fight. That's just the way that it is. So Merab will want to get the pressure on early. For that first round, he'll want to stay out of range more than inside of range, landing some leg kicks and the occasional jab on Sean O'Malley, but it's still very risky. And then if O'Malley makes a mistake, on him like a flash, push him up against the fence, and work on him, take him down. And when Merab decides that the time for striking is over and he wants to grapple, he just needs to stay in Sean O'Malley's face. It's quite as simple as that. Because if you're up close in the clinch, then it doesn't allow O'Malley to do his best work. O'Malley isn't really a guy who does knees in the clinch and stuff like that. He does have nice elbows. I remember a bit earlier on in his career, he used his elbows a bit more. But really, if the distance is non-existent, if these fighters are together, then you know that Merab will be doing the best work. That's just the way that it is. So each guy's path to victory couldn't be more different. And before I get on to my final prediction, I know I am teasing you now, there's a couple of things that I do want to go into about what Merab has said before this fight. That could be really interesting, because I put on a clip, and I watched this clip on Twitter, on X, sorry, where Merab did say that he's looking to finish Sean O'Malley. And let's be completely honest, I do know that Merab has a fight to sell, so you have to take what he says in the pre-fight build-up with a pinch of salt. And I'd hate to be accused of having a casual take, but Merab has said publicly he's looking to make a statement. He wants to finish O'Malley. So could this indicate an added level of aggression to Merab's game? Is he going to really try and put it on O'Malley with a striking? Yes, it might lead to a takedown and ground and pound to get him out of there. But is he going to be a more aggressive striker? And could this be extremely dangerous for Merab? I think it could be, because O'Malley thrives on aggressive fighters. Just look at the Aljamain Sterling fight. The fight that won him that bantamweight championship. Aljamain Sterling was over-aggressive. He marauded, I can't even say the word marauded anymore. He marauded forward, really aggressive, over-committed. Sean O'Malley stepped back, and with that sniper of a right hand, that absolute sharpshooter, he knocked Sterling down and got the finish. He was really patient, waiting for that forward blitz, and when it came, he slid back and found the perfect shot. So Sean O'Malley will be licking his lips at the prospect of a more aggressive, more reckless Merab Dvalishvili in the rematch. But again, you do have to take it with a bit of a pinch of salt. There is one reason why I think that Merab might not be bullshitting. And it's because he's an emotional fighter. He says it himself. He doesn't try and hide it. Again, all the things that I try and accuse these fighters of, it's most of the time at least, it's because they've said these things themselves, or at least indicated it very strongly. And Merab is an emotional fighter. Look what happened in the first fight with him and Tim Welch, having that back and forth because apparently Tim Welch was saying some stuff in the corner. And Merab wasn't lasered in, was he, in fighting Sean O'Malley? He was clearly bothered by what Tim Welch was saying. And he argued with him, and that brought Herb Dean. That was a bit of a mess, wasn't it, the start of that fight? But anyway, the point stands that if Merab is overly aggressive, he could walk straight into a trap that Sean O'Malley is setting. And you might argue, why didn't that happen in the first fight? But let's just loop back to the start of the video. If Sean O'Malley was compromised and he wasn't as sharp on the feet because of his hip, that could make a massive difference in this rematch. Now on to my final point before I do give my fight prediction. And it's just to reiterate the point that Sean O'Malley, he shouldn't look to stop every single takedown from Merab. I just feel like he'll be wasting so much time if he spends time pressed up against the fence, not allowing Merab to get his arms around his back and things like that. It does sound really counterintuitive because the judges will look approvingly if Merab's able to score takedowns. But I do feel as though if the options are either being held up against the fence for 2 minutes or taken down and then able to spring back up to your feet because your hips are feeling good, you're really good at getting up to your feet anyway, and Merab's top pressure generally isn't one of the better aspects of his game, I think it's worth Sean O'Malley accepting the takedown in order to get back onto his feet rather than just trying to wrestle with Merab against the fence. That's a really, really important point, and one that I want to emphasise because whichever way this fight goes at the weekend, I do think this will have a big part to play. Look, Merab's taken down Umar Nurmagomedov, Henry Cejudo multiple times. He carried Henry Cejudo across the octagon. So Merab can do this kind of thing against elite grapplers. I think the idea that Sean O'Malley's takedown defence will have improved so much that he'll be able to stop the takedown is just totally unrealistic. So rather than focusing on that, O'Malley needs to focus on his shot selection. If he does get taken down, get back up to your feet. Make sure your shot selection is really tailored around what to do when Merab does shoot on you. And then when you get back to your feet and there's separation, what shots you get off there, the kind of traps that you set in order to get off your counter shots. Basically, focus on what you do best, Sean O'Malley, rather than trying to beat a much better wrestler at his own game. So anyway, guys, that's enough preamble. I appreciate you taking the time to go through the storylines and the narratives of this fight, but it's time for the final prediction. And I've been really umming and ahhing with this, but I have Sean O'Malley winning by points, and it could even be slightly controversial. The way I see it is that Sean O'Malley will do some good work early on. In a similar vein to the Umar Nurmagomedov fight, Umar won the first 2 rounds before Merab took over. I can see Sean O'Malley landing some good shots, possibly even dropping Merab early on. Generally, I do think that Merab has a very good chin, but I think a well-placed shot, either a straight right down the pipe or a short left hook when Merab's trying to engage, I think it could put Merab down. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the first or second round, Merab at least drops to a knee after a really good shot from Sean O'Malley. I can see him getting some good work early on. At the same time, as I've already said, Merab will take Sean O'Malley down in multiple times in this fight. And when he does, don't be surprised if he really plays up to the crowd, tries to get them on his side, tries to get the judges on his side, because that's just what he does. In a similar way to a boxer after a close round, by them putting their hands in the air as they go back to the corner, they're just indicating, giving a little wink to the judges that they think they've won that round. But I do think the first 2 rounds will be pretty much all O'Malley on the feet, with the odd takedown from Merab. And then 3 and 4 I can see being really interesting, looking like the tide's starting to turn, because O'Malley will be getting more tired than Merab. But I just see Merab not doing enough in this fight. I think it will be very close, maybe 48-47 in the end. But I just can't shake the vision that I have in my head of O'Malley getting his hand raised. I've said it in the build-up if you've watched my previous videos to this fight, that I'm a massive fan of Merab. I think it's amazing. His story in itself, the way that he got to the UFC, this 12-fight win streak that he's riding. But I just think Sean O'Malley will edge it this time round. I think his hip injury and the recovery will make a difference. I'm not looking too deeply into him being laser focused, because I think that every fighter for every fight, unless something massive happens in your personal life outside of the octagon, I think most fighters are laser focused when they get in there. And I do just see Sean O'Malley edging this fight in terms of damage. Guys, let me know what you think. Which way do you have this fight going? Am I being silly overlooking Merab just rinse and repeat what he did in the first fight? Do you think I'm overstating all the changes that Sean O'Malley has made? But that's just the way I see it. Sean O'Malley, a lot of success early on, the tide beginning to turn, but Sean O'Malley just riding things out in terms of damage. Guys, I feel like a weight's been lifted off my shoulders. I've done about 5 videos in the build-up to this fight. If you have enjoyed this one, please do subscribe to the channel. I do really enjoy going in depth for these big fights, not necessarily the main events or title fights, but fights that have big title implications I should say. And as we are in June, there's some massive fights on the horizon. We've got so many that we need to get into. So if you have enjoyed this video, please comment below who you think is going to win and why. If you think my prediction's way off, don't think I'll be hurt by your words. Just tell me how you think. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys on Sunday morning after the fight.